tenemos traducción disponible. En la parte de abajo tienen la opción para seleccionar el lenguaje que les gustaría escuchar esta reunión. Y esta reunión está siendo grabada. Si ustedes están de acuerdo, pueden continuar o pueden cambiar su imagen. Nuevamente les damos la bienvenida. Somos el Comité Asesor de Padres a nivel distrito. Estamos en nuestra segunda reunión oficial del año. Bienvenidos a todos. Aquí tenemos a nuestra mesa directiva de DELAC. Estoy yo como presidenta, está el señor Gamboa de la escuela de Twain como vicepresidente y tenemos a la señora Verónica de Twain también que no nos ha podido acompañar. El señor Miguel nos va a presentar la agenda del día de hoy.
Gracias, Mailet. Buenos días, bienvenidos a todos los padres. Gracias por darnos su tiempo y estar con nosotros ojalá no nomás para estar informado, pero para también después de hoy o después de mirar esta junta grabada, puedan también hablar con más padres para que también más padres puedan venir a asistir a la reunión para que podamos tener más padres como nosotros que estamos aquí para apoyar al distrito, a los estudiantes y también a todo lo que estamos tratando de hacer para tratar de hacer una diferencia positiva. En la junta de hoy vamos a hablar sobre las actualizaciones sobre el rendimiento estudiantil. Estas son unas palabras que la mera verdad no he usado yo antes muchas veces. Y también, como siempre, vamos a
al español.
cómo vamos de progreso para que los estudiantes reclasificación y también cualquier otros, ¿cómo se dice? Anuncios sobre el progreso de la academia y para seguir para adelante.
Solo un pequeño recordatorio aquí de esta diapositiva para recordarles a todos los padres de que tenemos a través del sitio web información acerca de los protocolos que existen en nuestro distrito debido al COVID. Y recordarles que cada miércoles está el móvil para hacer exámenes sin costo alguno en la escuela de Rogers. Es solo un recordatorio general para que si gustan aprovechar esta oportunidad que nos da el distrito. Es cada semana los miércoles de 11 a 6 de la tarde.
Para la junta de hoy y para todas las juntas, siempre vamos a tener con nosotros Dr. Julie Kane, que es la directora de proyectos especiales. Y lo que quiero decir antes de que Dr. Kane empiece es que en el tiempo que yo he estado involucrado con el distrito en cualquier manera, Dr. Kane no nomás es una buena persona, pero es una persona del distrito que apoya mucho a los padres y sinceramente yo siempre le quiero decir que como padre agradecemos el apoyo de Dr. Kane y de muchas personas en el distrito, pero con el apoyo de Dr. Kane nos ayuda a reunirnos para informar a los padres, para dar información, pero también para dar buenos consejos y guiarnos en una manera positiva para seguir adelante y seguir juntándonos para estar informados y trabajar juntos. So, Dr. Kane, gracias por todo su esfuerzo. Le agradecemos mucho.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm going to share with you two things. One is progress of our students in English language proficiency, as well as their progress in English language arts and math. Both of these data slides were shared at the last board meeting, but I wanted to make sure that you also had this information so that you can understand how our students are progressing district-wide. And then we'll talk more about how you might go about talking about this at your site to look at how your students at your own schools are doing. So as you might remember, we have 4 district goals. And where we're going to spend our time right now is talking about the first and the second. One, increasing academic achievement for all students, and 2, ensuring access and equity, making sure that all of our students, including English learners, are able to access the curriculum and succeed at the highest levels. Just as a reminder of who our students are, as you can see here, this is the breakdown of our TK through 5th grade students. In the green, you see 49% of them are English only students at the elementary level, 30% are English learners, and there's a small sliver, 6% of reclassified fluent English proficient students. At the time of this slide, you also see a category called TBD, to be determined. That is for new students who enroll with us who have not yet been assessed. We just finished doing those assessments for our students. Parents were just notified this week of how their children did, and so you will see these numbers shift. All of those TBD students now will move into either the English learner category, the orange, or they'll move into the light green category, the IFEP, which is initially fluent English proficient. If we look now at the same breakdown at the middle school, you'll see it looks quite different because that reclassified fluent proficient section is now much larger. That makes up 35% of the student population, because that means we're doing our job. We are helping our students who enroll with us in kinder or TK as English learners. By the time they get to middle school, they are reclassified as fluent English proficient students. We have a much smaller percentage of English learners, that 18%. They are students who have not quite yet reclassified. Remember, it takes usually between 4 to 7 years to master a new language. So if you've come in kindergarten, 6th grade-ish into 7th is about where we would hope you would reclassify. So we do have students who reclassify then. And we have students who entered late. They entered as 3rd graders, 4th graders, 5th graders. So they're going to need their middle school time to reclassify. This is just a little summary of where we've been with LPAC testing. Back in 2018-19, which feels like 100 years ago, pre-pandemic, we were testing students using paper. We did 100% of those assessments in person, and we had 1,673 students to assess. If you move to the middle column in 1920, you'll see we only tested about 1/4 of those students. Why? Because we were in the middle of testing on March 13th, 2020, when we shut down schools. And so we were unable to finish those tests. We only tested 3rd through 8th grade, and not all at Rogers, Mitchell, or Green in those grades. We did not test any kinder through 2nd graders. And that was the first time we did an online test. 2021, we got our numbers back up, but this was the first time we did an online test, and we did it remotely. So another big shift, which makes it very difficult to compare from 2018-19 to 2021 how our students did. We can say 26% scored a level 4 in 18-19. In 2021, 18% scored a level 4, which is in the same ballpark. And looking at all the changes we've been through, we're doing pretty well. But you will see that we are managing to keep learning and reclassifying, and that's the good news I want to share with you. If you look at, but first let's look at the LPAC. Remember, LPAC is one of the components of reclassification. And you'll see here there's summative oral language, summative written language, and then their overall summative ELD level. What you see, let me move I have all your faces blocking the key so I can't see what it says. Level 4, we do far better in oral language. That's the blue column for summative oral, 35%. Summative written language was at 6% receiving a 4, and our overall was 17%. So as you can see, we have a clearly identified area of need in written language to support our students in reclassifying. You see a similar trend in grades 6 through 8, where our strongest area is oral language, and we struggle more to get the LPAC 4 in written language. So that is our focus area going forward. And so what is our response to that? Well, this phrase was shared with me, and I find it very helpful. Reading and writing float on a sea of talk. And what that means is, in order to write about something, I have to be able to talk about something. And that means I need the vocabulary about that content area. I need the language structures of the language I want to speak in this case, English. And so looking at our data, we recognize our students need to improve in their ability to clearly express their content, ideas, and writing. So we are working to increase time used where students are speaking and practicing their language in class. So what the professional development we are working on with teachers is to do some backwards planning, looking at a unit, let's say in language arts. This is what we want children to be able to express at the end of the unit. How do we plan all the way back to the beginning for the vocabulary, the language structures, and the practice so that they can be successful when we get to those writing assessments at the end? Now going back to reclassification criteria, remember we have made some changes in these 3 years of changes of testing, and whether we were in person or distance learning. We've also made some changes in our reclassification criteria. The one that remains the same is level 4 on LPAC. That's a state mandate that doesn't change. Teacher recommendation, that has not changed. That's always been based on grades. The area where we have changed is we have added additional opportunities for students throughout the school year in light of the fact that the SBAC went away and we haven't given it for 2 years. So we made sure that students have the opportunity to demonstrate proficiency through the benchmark unit assessments, through STAR reading assessments, and in the 6th through 8th grade iReady assessments for reading. The good news is, despite all the changes we've been through and all of the things happening, in 2021, we still managed to reclassify 241 students as English proficient. That's 15% of our English learner population, and that is above the norm in California. And for 21-22, we've already reclassified 126 students and counting. They will have additional opportunities with the benchmark Unit 4, with the iReady assessments each trimester, with the STAR reading test each semester. So I expect that number to reach and or exceed 241 that we had last year. So I just wanted to make sure that all of you are aware that our English learners, though we had some bumpy times in these last couple of years, we are still learning, still progressing, and still reclassifying. So good news continues. I also have some academic progress, but I just want to stop here for a moment to see if there are any questions at this point before we move on. And I only can see a few of you at a time, so feel free to unmute yourself if you do have a question and just call it out. Okay, not hearing any, I'm going to continue. By the way, I see lots of alerts here this morning. Good morning as I scroll through. My team is here. Our alerts, as you may know, are the English learner instructional resource teachers, one at each site, who are there to do this work and support you, parents, and your children in their academic and English language proficiency. So I'm thrilled to have them here, and always call on them when you need support. Okay, so let's take a brief look at academic progress. Again, we are supporting our district goals, focusing on increased academic achievement for all. Again, as I mentioned with reclassification, we had different assessments, right? Due to the pandemic, we did not administer the SBAC. Star reading continues, and we do that each trimester. And looking at star reading and star math, you can see that overall proficiency for all students was 39% in reading and 50% in math. Comparing, like we did with reclassification, if you look at over the years, 18-19 for star reading, we had 47% proficient at T2, 19-20, 46%, and 2021 T3, 39%. We started comparing T2 because, again, 19-20, we stopped at T2 and we closed down schools. So we wanted to have some continuity, but we also wanted to look at T3 this past year to see how we're doing. It's been a little bumpy. We're not scoring as well as we were, but we continue to move forward. As instructional time and settings changed in 2021, as we're all familiar. Looking at it by grade level, you can see how the different grade levels, 3rd through 8th grade, scored in star reading and in star math. And most interesting for our purposes today is looking at the English language status data for our students, looking at English only, English learner, initially fluent English proficient, and our redesignated fluent English proficient. The thing I find most interesting here is 3 of the 4 categories are bi or multilingual students. They make up the majority of our population of students. So, and look how well our initially fluent English proficient students are doing. These are students who are fluent in English and speak another language, at least one other. And our redesignated are the ones that came to us who were learning English, who also speak another language and have reclassified over time. So we see some good, strong achievement in that area, over 60% for our initially fluent, close to 50% for our reclassified, and our English only in reading, and higher in math. If we look at ethnicity, we also see how our students compare. And next steps, much like we're doing with English learning, we're back to in-person instruction. Nearly 97% are in person, not remote. We have full instructional minutes again. And we're addressing unfinished learning with a return to in-person interventions as well. We're continuing, this is where our teacher leaders come in, modeling and co-teaching with our teachers to help support our students, particularly for our purposes, our English learners. Our ELERT team here is helping support our English learners in accessing all content curriculum, as well as focusing specifically on English language development and helping our students achieve proficiency. And again, we're renewing our focus on academic discourse and purposeful questioning. Again, as I spoke about before, in order to write about something, you need to be able to speak about something. And so we're building in more student practice with talking, using academic vocabulary, using English language structures that they're practicing so that they can in turn write about those things and improve our writing scores. And we also have continued professional learning for teachers to support social emotional learning, because we are all adjusting to being back on campus all day, every day. So I'm going to pause there because that's moving to a different topic to see if we have any questions on that.
Tal vez un comentario, Miss Julie.
Uh-huh.
Viendo estos resultados, me da gusto ver que nuestros estudiantes que hablan más de un idioma
Mhm.
han tenido resultados positivos, no comparándolos con los que hablan solamente inglés, sino de que eso prueba de que el que hablen otro idioma no quiere decir que sean menos capaces intelectualmente, al contrario. Y también decir de que mi estudiante fue clasificado como aprendiz de inglés y yo no lo he visto como algo negativo, al contrario, lo han apoyado en su lenguaje para que pueda escribir y hablar correctamente el idioma inglés. Así es que les aplaudo el esfuerzo, el trabajo que hacen las especialistas en lenguaje, a las que están aquí presentes y sus equipos que constantemente apoyan a nuestros estudiantes para que puedan ellos reclasificar y cuando lleguen a grados más altos a la secundaria o que lleguen a la prepa, que es middle school y high school, vayan completamente preparados y puedan tener un mejor desarrollo académico y lograr llegar al colegio y tener éxito. Así es que gracias por estos resultados.
You're very welcome. It is a shift in how we think about things, isn't it? And that the term English learner sometimes comes with it as if it is a negative. And the language we use is shifting now more to emergent bilinguals, right? We have students who are mastering a second language. They have 2 or more languages to draw from. You think of it as linguistic resources, we have more. And so it's really a gift, it's an additive to have multiple languages. And so we're capitalizing on that and using those linguistic resources to help our students really thrive. So yes, thank you. It is a very positive thing and it's good to see our students progressing. Did anyone else have a question or a comment? Also quiet and shy today. My goodness, that's okay. We'll warm up.
Miss Julie,
yes.
nada más comentarles que si gustan hacer la pregunta y no la quieren hacer a través del micrófono, lo pueden hacer a través del chat.
Oh, okay.
Y vamos a estar al pendiente para hacerle nosotros la pregunta a usted y contestarle si tiene alguno de los padres que están aquí presentes alguna duda. Gracias, Miss Julie.
Thank you. Maya, would you like me to continue with the needs assessment or would you like to talk about it?
Puede continuar, Miss Julie.
Thank you so much. What I'm showing you here is the English Learner Needs Assessment. If you remember, if you were with us last year, towards the end of the school year, each school administered this needs assessment survey to families of English learners at their sites to really help us understand if parents understand the rights of our English learners, the services provided for our English learners, and where they could go to get that information. And so this assessment was administered. I'm going to show you a sample of one, because what I really want to encourage you to do is to go back to your site and to ask to see the data for your school, because each school is different. And that is a really great place to start with your ELAC, your English Learner Advisory Council, to look at what is the data telling us that our students need, and then what is our school providing? Is there a match between what they need and what we're providing, so that we can understand how to support our students? And if we see a gap, maybe there's something different we could think about doing. So looking at the survey, the first question was, I feel that my child made adequate progress this school year. So you'll see in this school situation, 44.4% agreed, 18.5% strongly agreed. But there is a segment who either disagreed or have no opinion. So I would want to, if this were my school, I would want to find out who answered disagree and find out what might be happening with those students, where they're struggling, and what we might be able to do for them. Another question was, my child is receiving enough support in core subjects. In this case, for this question, we see 74.1% agree and 22% strongly agree. The others had no opinion. So I'd call this a pretty strong one. Okay, the parents are feeling like, okay, my child is getting the support they need in math, language arts, science, history. Great. Although there's a slight difference between they're getting enough support and they made adequate progress. So again, that would begin for me to start asking some questions, like what might we need to do to help these students whose parents feel they're not making enough progress. Another question, I am informed of my child's progress. Again, strongly agree, 25, almost 26%, agree, 66.7%. The majority are informed. There's a small sliver, 3.7%, that are not feeling that way. Your e-alerts can support you in looking to see who's feeling that way and how might we help them feel informed. What can we do to better publicize that information, or not publicize, but it's family by family through parent-teacher conferences, through a phone call, through Class Dojo, something so that we know how our children are doing. And the fourth one is, I feel that the English language development program is working well for my child. Again, the majority agree, but there is a small percentage that doesn't. First thing I would want to do is make sure my parents understand what the English language development program is. What does it consist of? Just like our testing has shifted over the 3 years, so has the way we deliver English language development. When we were in the building before the pandemic, every grade level traded classrooms. So the higher proficient English students would go to this room, and the middle would go here, and the newer students would go here, and they would get differentiated instruction. The next year we went to learning from home, and teachers were trying to take small groups. Okay, you guys come on camera, I'll work with you. Now you guys go away. Now this group come on camera, I'll work with you. Or they would do, some schools did before school, the early birds. There were different manners of doing it. This year, we're back in the building, but we're still constrained in that we can't form small groups in the classroom. We're kind of stationary in our seating charts. So the teacher has to move around. And so we're trying to figure out, how do I deliver differentiated English language development in these, under these constraints? And so it does look different. And so it's a good question to ask the teacher, how is English language development being delivered this year? And how can I support my child? And is it working for my child? These are all really good questions to ask. See, there are a couple more questions. I am aware of my child's English proficiency level. That's an important one. Most are aware. That's great. We do our best to make sure parents are informed. There are letters coming out, and we have parent conferences this week, but there's an annual notification letter coming out that will say, here's all our reclassification criteria. So here's the LPAC. Here's how your child scored against the LPAC. Here's the, the iReady, the star reading, the, what was the last one I said? The benchmark units, right? Thank you, Matt. I see her mouthing it for me. She's helping me. Here's how your child is doing against those. Here's the grade requirement. Here's how your child's doing against those. So parents are informed, oh, this is what it takes to reclassify, and this is where my child is. And so now we can talk about, how do I get my child from here to here? I think I jumped ahead to I understand the reclassification of English learners, process and criteria. That's exactly what that letter explains, both what the criteria are and where your child is. Another question is, translation is provided to me in my language when I need it. That's an important one that we want to make sure is taking place, much like we do here in our meetings, to make sure that all parents feel welcome and can understand what's happening. We want to do the same. Here you see almost 90% are saying yes. Some don't require translation. That's fine. We note that. And then there's some with no opinion. So at least at this site, nobody said it wasn't provided. That's good news. So we're meeting that one. And then the last one here is, I know how to help my student at home and support the work that the school is doing. That's a big one. And thankfully here, most agree. There's a small proportion that doesn't. So again, we have to think, well, how are we doing outreach? We tend to spend a lot of time with our kinder families, right, to kick them off because they're our newest members, but we also have kids coming in throughout the years. How do we make sure that every year that our kids transition to the next grade? Parent conferences right now is the best time for parents to go in and ask those questions. So I hope we're getting a strong response with parents. I think the Zoom conferences is actually helping. It's easier to go to a conference when you just turn on your computer as opposed to having to drive. So I think that's helping our ability to attend. But these are all the questions that our parents should be asking both individually at parent conferences for their own children, as well as when you go to your first ELAC. And most of our schools are having their first ELAC either next week or the week after. So if you haven't seen that advertised yet, this is the time to ask, when is ELAC happening? I really want to come. And you will do a similar thing like we're doing here. You'll look at your own school's data. You'll look at your own school's needs assessment, and then talk about, so what does this mean for us? What do we need to do? And what's our plan for making that happen? And that concludes the needs assessment portion of our program. Are there any questions or comments about that?
Otro comentario, Miss Julie, que es importante recordarle a los padres, los que están aquí presentes o los que tal vez vean nuestra grabación, de que cuando la escuela les manda una encuesta, tomarse el tiempo de contestar. El distrito toma en cuenta sus opiniones. Estas tal vez son preguntas no específicas que ustedes tienen, a lo mejor tienen otras dudas, pero aún así, estas encuestas son con ese propósito de encontrar, como lo dijo Dr. Kane, encontrar esos gaps donde algo está fallando y trabajar para no corregirlo, pero para poder encontrar por qué razón el papá se siente que el hijo no está avanzando lo suficiente académicamente, o que no sabe de qué se trata que su hijo sea aprendiz de inglés. Todas estas encuestas son importantes para que nosotros como padres estemos informados, pero para que el distrito también sepa qué información darnos. A lo mejor todos estos números no tienen mucho sentido si no sabe en qué posición está su hijo, si ya reclasificó, si apenas entró a la escuela, o si ya está por reclasificar, ya nada más le falta un peldaño para moverse de aprendiz de inglés a otro nivel. Entonces, les pedimos, les motivamos que cuando reciban una encuesta de su escuela, contesten. Es muy importante. El distrito toma en cuenta sus opiniones. Y si usted no ve la pregunta que en la encuesta está y tiene una duda, puede comunicarse con sus especialistas de lenguaje o con su community liaison, que es la que también le puede asistir. Gracias y perdón por interrumpir, Mr. Gamboa.
Oh, we can't hear you, Miguel.
All right, sorry. Gracias, Mailet. Y también les queríamos decir a todos los padres, como les dije en el principio, es muy importante que estemos y sigamos involucrados en lo que está pasando en el distrito y con nuestros estudiantes y en las escuelas. También hay otros comités que tienen reuniones como esta. Una de ese comité es DPAC. Y aquí pueden ver que la próxima reunión va a ser el 27 de octubre a las 9 de la mañana. Y la próxima junta de DELAC va a ser noviembre 10. Pero hablando sobre las otras comités, es muy importante que estemos involucrados lo más posible. no nomás cuando, no nomás cuando podamos, pero también estar pensando de cómo más podemos estar involucrados y hablar con otros padres para que también ellos estén informados. Si hay padres que no han asistido a una de estas juntas, es importante que vengan para mirar de qué estamos hablando, y como ellos también pueden estar más involucrados en el distrito. Es muy importante que como padres no tengamos miedo, no tengamos, en veces por decir vergüenza de estar involucrados y de hablar. De hablar. Nuestra voz es la más importante. Sin los estudiantes no hay escuelas y sin nosotros no hay estudiantes. Los padres son los más importantes y, y tenemos que estar involucrados y todos padres están bienvenidos a cualquier reunión. También hay la reunión el viernes. No sé a qué tiempo, pero la de APAC es este viernes. También pueden asistir, todos padres están libres de asistir a cualquier reunión, no nomás una u otra.
Should we move on to the next slide?
Ujú.
Yeah. Okay.
Y también la próxima semana, esta sí es bien importante también, como las otras juntas, esta en una forma diferente. Al final del día, las decisiones grandes sobre lo que está pasando en el distrito, todo tiene que pasar por la mesa directiva en el distrito, y como padres tenemos que estar presentes. Y si hay algo que ustedes como padres sienten que no está pasando o quieren decir, la primera cosa es asistir a la junta de la mesa directiva y con confianza pedir permiso para hablar y hacer comentario. Se puede hacer en cualquier lenguaje, no nomás, no tengan, por decir, no tengan miedo de hablar. Si, ah, aunque no hablen bien el inglés, lo pueden decir en español o en otro lenguaje. Y es muy importante que nuestras voces estén presentes en estas juntas, o si no van a pensar que no nos importa lo que está pasando.
Nada más, ¿puedo agregar algo? También estamos buscando padres que les gustaría tomar nuestras posiciones. Entonces, si ahorita es el momento que usted apenas viene a conocer de qué se trata DELAC, o si ya ha estado con nosotros en varias ocasiones, estamos buscando padres que quieran estar involucrados haciendo lo que nosotros hacemos, lo que Mr. Gamboa hace, lo que yo hago. Y Dr. Kane es excelente para entrenarlos de cómo se hace. Ella va a estar totalmente apoyándolos. Así es que si tiene usted el interés de tomar nuestras posiciones, se puede comunicar con nosotros o con su especialista en lenguaje. Con ella se pueden comunicar y decirle, oh, a mí me gustaría ser parte del comité de DELAC. Y mire, empezar desde ahorita y para el final del año escolar ya tendríamos las posiciones llenas. Así es que una cordial invitación para los padres que están aquí, los que nos escuchan en el mensaje ya pregrabado, que si les gustaría formar parte de este comité, se pueden comunicar con su especialista en lenguaje o directamente con Dr. Kane. Esto es todo por nosotros. Los vemos en el próximo mes. Nos vemos en noviembre 10. Si tienen oportunidad, por favor participen en otros comités locales de sus escuelas o nos vemos en la reunión de la mesa directiva.